Genesis chapter 38. And it came to pass in that time, Judah went from his brothers, and arrived unto before a certain man, an Adulamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a Canaanite man, whose name was Shua. And he took her, and entered to her. And conceiving, she bore a son, and called his name And conceiving, she bore a son still again, and called his name Onan. And adding, she bore a son, and called his name Shelah. And she was in Kesib when she bore them. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And it came to pass, the firstborn of Judah, was wicked before the Lord, and God killed him. And Judah said to Onan, Enter to the wife of your brother, and ally to her by marriage, and raise up seed to your brother. And Onan, knowing that the seed will not be his, that it came to pass, whenever he entered to his brother's wife, he discharged upon the ground, to not give seed to his brother. And it appeared wicked before God that he did this, and he put to death also this one. And Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, You sit as a widow in the house of your father, until Shelah my son becomes older. For he said, Lest at any time this one also should die, as also his brothers. And Tamar, going forth, settled in the house of her father. And the days multiplied, and Shua, the wife of Judah, died. And being comforted, Judah ascended to the shearing of his sheep, he and Hira his shepherd the Adulamite, unto Timnath. And it was reported to Tamar his daughter-in-law, saying, Behold, your father-in-law ascends to Timnath to shear his sheep. And removing the garments of the widowhood from herself, she put around a lightweight covering, and bedecked herself, and sat by the gates of Enaim, which is in the byway of Timnath. For she knew that Shelah was older, but he did not give her to him as wife. And Judah, seeing her, assumed her to be a harlot, for she covered up her face. And he recognized her not. And he turned aside to her in the way, and he said to her, Allow me to enter to you. For he did not know that she is his daughter-in-law. And she said, What will you give to me, if you should enter to me? And he said, I will send to you a kid of the goats from out of my flocks. And she said, You should give a deposit until you send it. And he said, What deposit shall I give to you? And she said, Your ring, and the pendant, and the rod in your hand. And he gave them to her, and entered to her. And she conceived in the womb from him. And rising up, she went forth. And she removed her lightweight garment from herself, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid of the goats by the hand of his shepherd the Adulamite, to deliver by him to the woman the deposit. And he did not find her. And he asked the men from the place, Where is the harlot, being in Enaim upon the way? And they said, There was not a harlot here. And he returned to Judah and said, I did not find her. And the men from the place say, There was no harlot here. And Judah said, Let her have them. But lest at any time we should be ridiculed, I indeed sent this kid, but you have not found her. And it came to pass after 3 months, it was announced to Judah, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, fornicated, and behold, she has one in the womb from out of harlotry. And Judah said, Lead her out, and let her be incinerated. And while leading her, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, From out of the man of whom these things are, I have one in the womb. And she said, Recognize whose ring and pendant and rod these are. And Judah realized and said, Tamar has done justice rather than I, because I did not give her Shelah my son. And he did not add any longer to know her. And it came to pass, when she was bearing, that thus there were twins in her womb. And it came to pass in her bearing, the one put forth first the hand, and taking it, the midwife tied upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This one will come forth prior. And as he retracted the hand, straightway came forth his brother. And she said, Why was the barrier cut through because of you? And she called his name Pharez. And after this came forth his brother, of which was upon his hand the scarlet thread, and she called his name Zara.